Well, could possibly have the state governments taken up that challenge, since the federal government was now really focusing more on crop production? Because I know, Africa Farmer, you have a farm somewhere on the outskirts between Lagos and Ogun State. So could probably, maybe not just you, for other farmers now who are interested in actually going into animal husbandry, like Mr. Awerik has actually pointed out, could state governments have actually looked at how they could help in terms of encouraging more farmers to go into animal husbandry?
Harriet, you're right. Federal is doing quite a lot. The states are not performing at all. I will rate them at 10%. The state government, if the state government...
Well, not all state governments, I'm sure.
Most of them, about 95% of the state governments, are not performing at all when you compare the resources available to them. You know, case in view, my dad, he has a 500-acre farm in Ekiti, leased part of 17 massive standard ponds to the state government. Today, the ponds are not being utilized, even though he gave them at a giveaway price, because the state government is not doing what needs to be done. And I travel across, especially the southwestern states. Most of those things are not being, done, monitored. You find a situation where the people who are supposed to monitor the youth programs, they are the ones who want to siphon and make sure that what the feeds that the youth should get, they don't give them at the time they need it. So state and local government. I had some privileges of meeting some local government chairmen, develop materials for them free, and they did not implement in 3 years. None. And you see, most of this local governments have the infrastructure, but they just don't want to put money into. The state government needs to wake up. I think the good side of the challenges in the oil sector is because they need revenue, they will be forced to invest in agriculture, monitor, not because they want the progress of the people, but because they need the funds to flow in. So if you look at the two sides of the coin, they have no choice now but to get involved. But the hope is that they will get involved in the sector in the right form, and not big projects again. And one other thing I say is, when a parent is giving the children food across Nigeria, you find them saying, don't eat the meat first. It's because it's not enough. If it's available, you don't care. And meanwhile, the child needs more protein than the carbohydrate. But say, don't eat. They give the big waste, and they say, take little protein. It shows across board, urban and rural setting. But you see, like if we encourage some crops, take for instance, there's what you call quality protein maize that is high in lysine and protein. If the rural community, because I'm a fan for the rural, if the rural community, if they encourage the growth of that maize, it shortens the growth period for 3 weeks, an average of 3 weeks in both pigs and birds. So if you have shorter production period with those maize, then that means that the rural people who used to have goats, livestock in their backyards no longer have those things. But with the promotion of that kind of maize and public awareness, it reduces the cost, because cost is also what is making the livestock industry not perform. The cost is high. So that's why the government will probably look at crops. It's cheaper, it requires less infrastructure, and the period, and they'll get results fast. And don't forget, we're not so very patient.
Yeah,
okay,
that's true.
Yeah, so we don't want that livestock. We want to see results, and even the government will be appraised and assessed on what are you delivering.
But I think I want to add a voice there. It is a sad moment for us in the agri sector that the state governments are connected with people directly. The federal government should be like a policy framework and bringing out what they call the larger outlook. The state and local governments are directly with the people. When you talk about employment, that's where employment is big. But when you go to some other states, you get there, they don't monitor anything that is going on. I have one bigger state, I won't call the state now for most of the viewers. I visited them on invitation. They sell 10 tons of fresh fish every day. To tell you, they have such a large expansion. So I asked them a question. How much has government come into you? They were looking at me. Government should be interested in such kind of project. We have gone on to tell them we want to add value to that fish. And whatever you produce, we take it off from you. That is how the linkage works. If a government service goes behind and say, look, I noticed that you produce, you sell this, we will back you up. Some of us who are processors will go to that zone and guarantee a market for them.
But even at that, you would also encourage more other companies to actually start in other parts of the country as well.
The second stage of this project I'm talking to you, I've just been invited to come again to see how we can evaluate process flow through training people. As we're talking now, I always tell some state governors, set up 10 processing plants in your place. You will employ another than times 10. 250 people will go into that place. And it has a linkage effect. There's a multiplier effect. So we pray very well that the states and local government, based on what he said, will not be talking. When I hear people say the federal government is not encouraging agric, with all that is going on, how does the fertilizer come? GES. It comes to us direct. This is supposed to be, and it's a state-managed thing. It means the state is supposed to be able to use that to even grow its own wealth. It's interesting when you talk about maize, you get some state. I remember there's a governor in this country. In his state, if you see the volume of yam that is coming out, and then the volume that is going to waste, logistics, nobody's managing it well. So some of us move in there and guarantee that we'll move 10 trailers in a month from you. And people will look at us with wonders. Because what we're doing is encouraging other farmers to begin to expand their farm because there's a ready market.
But then you still have issues with road. But quickly comment on this if you can. From Atsal to Swan, he says, how can we talk about export now when we still can't meet domestic demand? Hashtag fish market especially.
Let me tell you, we have this unwritten value in our brain that when we export, the market will be depleted. Go to production sites and see food being wasted. You want to know the quantity of cashew waste in this country? Go to anywhere they are producing now. I've just been talking about fish growers. The number of people who are fishing today and looking for where they will put their products, they are overwhelming more than the demand. So when you do the export, what is the volume of export? Every country on the world, Ghana lives on export. Let me just tell you that. Because the oil Ghana found, he said they don't want to go the way of Nigeria. But Ghana is an agrarian country, and they are exporting all over the world. So why is it that the Ghanaians are not hungry? You see food everywhere. And of course, you know what? When you mass produce food and it can move around, food becomes cheap.
Yeah. That will make me come to you now, Mr. Mogaji. We know that there's been so much unrest in the northeast and even some parts of north central, because of insurgency and all of that. And we've seen reduced production output. Now we have another question that says, what's being done to diversify production location? Why the overdependence on tomatoes from the north?
Now, the good thing is, in the last 1 year, we've had quite an increase in people who want to grow tomatoes in the southwest. 2 weeks ago, we were still holding a seminar. Yesterday, I was still talking in a religious setting, and I discovered that people had actually invested money, but information, they don't have information on the how-to. And tomato is a technical crop. I grow tomatoes very well. In the crop sector, it's technical. People just think tomatoes grow, corn grows, and they just step into it. So they try it out with what I call Google farming. You just Google online and get the information and come here, forgetting we don't have the equipment, we don't have electricity, we don't have a lot of things. So bottom line, more people are getting into it. And I raised something recently. I would expect that the dry season support program and a lot of initiatives will begin to pay attention to the challenges of the insecurity in the major producing areas.
Well, Mr. Mogaji, you've gotten ahead of me because that's where we're actually going to come back and talk about that dry planting season. It's a very important aspect of agriculture that I think we need to focus more on. So let me not even rush you. Let's take a quick break, catch our breath, and come back and continue this conversation. You're watching Business Morning on Channels Television. On the program today, we're looking at agriculture, another look at agriculture, especially since now more than ever, the economy needs to be diversified. The conversation will continue in just a moment. Please join us again.